The stars looked different out here. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant, staring at the view screen with his arms crossed. The ship hummed quietly around him, a steady rhythm that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. 3 months into their mission and they still hadn't found anything interesting. Just rocks, dust, and empty space. Sophie Bennett walked up beside him holding a data pad. She was his tactical officer and one of his oldest friends. They had served together in the Marines before joining the Exploration Corps. She knew him well enough to read his mood. "Bored already?" she asked with a small smile. Jake shrugged. "I thought exploration would be more exciting. Maybe find some aliens, see new worlds. Instead, we're scanning dead moons." "Be careful what you wish for," Sophie said. She tapped her data pad. "We're picking up something unusual on the next moon. Energy readings that don't match anything natural." That got Jake's attention. He turned to face her fully. "How unusual?" "Very. Commander Grant wants you to take a team down to investigate." Jake felt a spark of excitement. Finally, something to do. He called for Sergeant Troy Hamilton and Dr. Helen Price to meet him in the shuttle bay. Troy was their heavy weapons specialist, a big man with an easy laugh. Helen was the ship's xenobiologist, always eager to study anything new. 20 minutes later, their shuttle touched down on the barren moon. The surface was gray and lifeless, covered in fine dust that puffed up with each step. Jake led the team toward the energy signature, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip, old habits from his Marine days. "There," Helen said, pointing ahead. A structure rose from the dust, half buried, but clearly artificial. It was made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. Symbols covered its surface, flowing and organic in a way that made Jake's eyes hurt if he looked too long. "Wow," Troy breathed. "That's definitely not human." Helen was already scanning it with her equipment. "The energy readings are off the charts. This thing is still active even after who knows how many years." "Can you tell what it does?" Jake asked. "Not yet. I need to run more scans." Jake gave the approval. Helen moved closer with her scanner, adjusting settings and taking readings. Jake and Troy kept watch, scanning the horizon for any threats. The moon seemed dead, but something about this place made Jake nervous. Then Helen's scanner beeped loudly. The structure suddenly lit up, symbols glowing with a pale blue light. The ground beneath their feet vibrated. Doc? What did you do?" Troy asked, backing away. "Nothing. The scan must have triggered something." Helen looked panicked. "Everyone back to the shuttle now," Jake ordered. They ran. The structure pulsed brighter and brighter, and Jake could feel heat radiating from it. They were almost to the shuttle when Sophie's voice crackled over the radio. "Jake, we have a problem. A big one." "What kind of problem?" "A ship just appeared out of nowhere. It's massive, Jake. Bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Hostile?" "They're targeting us with weapons. Commander Grant is trying to communicate, but they're not responding." They reached the shuttle and launched immediately. As they cleared the moon's surface, Jake saw the alien ship through the viewport. Sophie hadn't been exaggerating. The thing was enormous, a dark mass of sharp angles and glowing lines that hurt to look at. It made the Valiant look like a toy. They docked quickly. Jake ran to the bridge, arriving just in time to hear Commander Lisa Grant speaking into the communication system. "This is the Earth vessel Valiant. We mean no harm. We are explorers on a peaceful mission." No response. The alien ship just hung there in space, weapons still locked on them. "Try again," Jake suggested. Before Grant could respond, a new sound filled the bridge. It was harsh and clicking like rocks grinding together. Then it resolved into words translated by their computer. "You have violated sacred territory. You have touched what was not yours to touch. Prepare to be boarded." Grant looked at Jake. "Options?" "We can't fight that thing," Jake said. "And we can't run. They'd destroy us before we could jump to hyperspace. So we let them board? I don't see another choice." 5 minutes later, they felt the thump of something docking with their ship. Jake ordered the crew to gather in the main cargo bay unarmed. If these aliens wanted a fight, giving them one would just get everyone killed. The airlock hissed open. What came through made several crew members gasp. The aliens were huge, easily 8 feet tall. Their skin looked like dark armor, chitinous and plated. They had 4 arms, each ending in 3-fingered hands that looked strong enough to crush steel. Their heads were angular, with multiple eyes that glowed faintly. They moved with predatory grace despite their size. 6 of them entered the cargo bay, weapons held ready. Behind them came one who was clearly in charge. This one wore armor decorated with symbols and moved with absolute authority. The leader spoke and the translator rendered it into English. I am Scout Commander Yelith of the Zekthari Empire. You have trespassed on holy ground. You will come with us for judgment. Helen stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. We didn't know. We're explorers from Earth. We've never encountered your people before. We meant no disrespect. Yelith's multiple eyes focused on her. The alien tilted its head in what might have been curiosity or contempt. Ignorance is not innocence. You will submit to interrogation. Your leaders will answer for this violation. Commander Grant stepped forward. I'm the captain of this vessel. If someone needs to answer, it should be me. No, Yelith said, the one who touched the shrine. That one will face judgment. Everyone looked at Helen. Her face went pale. Jake saw her hand start to shake, though she tried to hide it. He made a decision. It was me, Jake said, stepping forward. I gave the order to scan the structure. I'm responsible. Jake, no, Sophie whispered. He ignored her. He walked right up to Yelith, meeting the alien's multiple eyes without flinching. Up close, the Zekthari was even more intimidating. Jake barely came up to the middle of its chest. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. I was in command of the landing party. Take me. Leave my crew alone. Yelith studied him for a long moment. Then something that might have been respect flickered in those alien eyes. You show courage, small one. Very well, you will come. The rest will remain here unharmed as long as they behave. Jake, you can't, Grant said. I can and I will. Keep everyone safe, Commander. That's an order. 2 of the Zekthari warriors grabbed him. Their grip was firm but not painful. They led him toward the airlock. As he passed Sophie, he caught her eye and tried to smile. She looked terrified. The alien ship was dark and hot. The corridors were built for beings much larger than humans, making Jake feel like a child. They brought him to a massive chamber that could only be a throne room. And there, sitting on a throne made of what looked like crystallized bone, was their queen. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Larger than the other Zekthari, her armor was decorated with battle scars and precious metals. Her eyes glowed brighter, and when she moved, it was with the absolute confidence of a born predator. Yelith pushed Jake forward. He stumbled but caught himself, refusing to fall. My Queen Veronica, Yelith said. This one claims responsibility for defiling the ancient shrine. The queen rose from her throne and descended the steps. Each footfall echoed in the chamber. She circled Jake slowly, looking him up and down like a butcher examining meat. So small, she said, her voice deep and resonant. So soft, no armor, no claws, no venom. How does your species survive? Jake kept his voice steady. We use our brains, Your Majesty, and we work together. Your brains? She leaned down until her face was inches from his. Her breath was hot and smelled like copper. Your brains led you to violate holy ground. Not very intelligent. We didn't know it was holy. We're new to this region of space. We're explorers, not conquerors. Explorers, she repeated, standing up straight again. That is what all invaders say at first. You explore, you map. You learn our weaknesses. Then you attack, not us. Humanity seeks knowledge, not war. The queen made a sound that might have been laughter. It was harsh and clicking, raising the hairs on Jake's neck. Every species capable of crossing the stars seeks dominance. It is the way of the universe. The strong rule. The weak serve or die. Maybe that's been your experience. But humans are different. Are you? She studied him with those glowing eyes. I wonder. You volunteered to face judgment in place of another. That shows either courage or stupidity. Perhaps both. I protect my crew. That's my duty. Duty, she said thoughtfully. We understand duty. Very well, small human. I will test you. In our culture, worth is proven through combat. You will fight one of my warriors. If you win, your people may leave freely. If you lose, you and your crew will serve the Zekthari Empire. Jake's heart sank. He'd expected something like this, but hearing it confirmed was still a blow. Fighting a Zekthari warrior was suicide. They were twice his size, 4 times as strong and covered in natural armor. But he didn't hesitate. I accept. Good, Queen Veronica said. The combat will begin tomorrow. Rest well, human. You will need your strength. Guards led him to a small cell. It was bare except for a bench that was too large for him to use comfortably as a bed. Jake sat down and put his head in his hands. What had he gotten himself into? There was no way he could win a Jake didn't sleep that night. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw himself getting torn apart by a creature that could probably break him in half without effort. The cell was cold and the bench was uncomfortable, but that wasn't what kept him awake. He spent the hours thinking about everything he knew about fighting. His father had taught him boxing when he was young. The Marines had trained him in hand-to-hand combat. He'd studied martial arts in his free time, always fascinated by how technique could overcome size and strength. But this was different. This was facing something that shouldn't be possible to beat. When the guards came for him in the morning, Jake was ready. Or as ready as he could be. They led him through the corridors again, and he noticed other Zekthari stopping to watch him pass. Word had spread about the challenge. They brought him to a large arena. It was circular, with high walls and seating that rose in tiers all around. Hundreds of Zekthari filled the seats, their eyes glowing in the dim light. At the far end on a raised platform sat Queen Veronica with her court. Jake was pushed into the center of the arena. The floor was smooth stone, worn from countless battles. He looked up at the queen, who gazed down at him with what might have been curiosity. A door opened on the opposite side of the arena. Jake's heart jumped. Sophie, Troy, and Helen were brought in under guard. They were placed in a viewing area near the queen's platform. Sophie looked terrified. When she saw him, she mouthed something he couldn't make out. The queen stood. The arena fell silent instantly. "Human," her voice boomed across the space. "You have agreed to ritual combat. Before we begin, you must choose your weapon." Several Zekthari warriors entered the arena, carrying different weapons. Jake saw blades that glowed with energy, spears taller than he was, and things he couldn't even identify. They laid them out on the ground before him. Jake walked along the row, examining each weapon. They were all designed for beings with forearms and massive strength. The smallest blade was too heavy for him to wield effectively. The spear was so tall he could barely lift it. Even if he could use them, he'd never trained with weapons like these. He made a decision. Jake stepped back from the weapons and faced the queen. "I won't use any of these." A murmur ran through the crowd. The queen's eyes narrowed. "You refuse to arm yourself? This is surrender?" "No, Your Majesty. These weapons weren't made for someone like me. I can't use them properly. I'll fight with what I know. You will fight with nothing. You have no claws, no venom, no natural weapons. You will die." Jake allowed himself a small smile. "Maybe. But I'll die fighting my way, not trying to use weapons I don't understand." The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, that harsh clicking sound. "Foolish, but brave, very well. General Krovan, select a champion." A massive Zekthari descended from the platform. This one was even larger than the others, with more battle scars decorating his armor. He wore a harness that held various weapons and medals. "Warrior Prime Dekthor," the general announced. "Champion of 300 duels, undefeated." Dekthor entered the arena. He was easily 9 feet tall, and his forearms rippled with muscle beneath the chitinous armor. He picked up a blade that glowed blue along its edge and took a shield in another hand. He looked at Jake the way someone might look at an insect. "This will not be a fight," Dekthor said. "It will be an execution." Jake didn't respond. He was too busy assessing his opponent. Dekthor was big, strong, and experienced. But size and strength meant weight. Weight meant momentum, and momentum could be used against you if you knew how. Jake started moving, staying light on his feet, bouncing slightly. Old boxing habits. He raised his hands in a guard position and started circling. Dekthor watched him with what might have been confusion. The queen raised one hand. "Begin!" Dekthor moved fast for something so large. He lunged forward, bringing the blade down in an overhead strike meant to split Jake in half. But Jake had been watching for it. He'd seen the telegraphing and the warrior's stance. Jake rolled to the side. The blade crashed into the stone where he'd been standing, sending up sparks. Before Dekthor could recover, Jake was up and moving, getting inside the warrior's reach. He struck fast, hitting nerve clusters at the base of Dekthor's lower arms. The warrior's armor protected him from serious damage, but Jake felt him flinch. Good. The armor had weak points at the joints. Dekthor swung his shield arm around. Jake ducked under it, rolled again, came up on the warrior's other side. He kicked at the back of Dekthor's knee, not hard enough to do real damage through the armor, but enough to make him stumble. The arena was completely silent. The Zekthari had never seen anything like this. In their combat tradition, Warriors faced each other directly, testing strength against strength. This human fought like water, flowing around attacks instead of meeting them. Dekthor roared in frustration. He abandoned any attempt at technique and just started swinging wildly with all four arms, trying to catch Jake through sheer speed and coverage. But Jake had fought bigger opponents before. He knew how to read body language, how to see an attack coming before it landed. He wove between the strikes like a dancer, never staying still, always moving. A blade whistled past his head, close enough that he felt the heat from it. A massive fist slammed into the ground where his foot had been a second before. Jake waited for his moment. When Dekthor overextended on a particularly powerful swing, Jake saw his chance. He stepped in, caught the blade arm with both hands, and used every bit of his body weight and momentum. He pivoted, pulling the arm down and to the side. Physics did the rest. Dekthor's own strength worked against him. The warrior stumbled off balance, and Jake helped him along. With a twist of his hips and a pull, he sent the massive alien crashing to the ground. The blade skittered across the arena floor. The crowd erupted in shocked hisses and clicks. Jake backed away quickly, getting distance. His heart was pounding and sweat ran down his face, but he'd done it. He'd put the champion on the ground. Dekthor got up slowly. Jake could see rage in those glowing eyes. The warrior threw aside his shield and blade. If the human wanted to fight without weapons, then so be it. Dekthor would tear him apart with his bare hands. The warrior charged. Jake didn't run. Instead, he dropped low under Dekthor's grasping arms and swept his legs. Not a full sweep, just enough to disrupt the charge. Dekthor stumbled but didn't fall this time. They circled each other. Jake was breathing hard now. Every near miss, every dodge took energy. He couldn't keep this up forever. He needed to end it. Dekthor lunged again, and this time Jake didn't dodge. He stepped in, getting so close that the warrior's arms couldn't get a good angle. Four hands grabbed at him, trying to get a grip. But Jake was already moving. He used a technique he'd learned from jiu-jitsu, modified for an opponent with four arms. He grabbed one of Dekthor's upper arms, used it as leverage to jump, wrapped his legs around the warrior's thick neck and twisted. Dekthor tried to grab him, but Jake was positioned just right. The warrior's own upper arms blocked his lower ones. Jake squeezed with his legs, cutting off blood flow to Dekthor's brain. The warrior thrashed, trying to throw him off. But Jake held on with everything he had. 10 seconds. 20. Dekthor's movements became weaker. 30. The warrior stumbled. 40. Dekthor fell to his knees. At 50 seconds, the champion collapsed completely. Jake released him immediately and rolled away, ready for another attack. But Dekthor didn't move. He was unconscious. The arena was absolutely silent. Jake stood there, chest heaving, hardly believing what had just happened. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Then the crowd exploded, not with cheers, but with shocked clicking and hissing. Some Zekthari stood up from their seats. Others leaned forward, staring. None of them had expected this. Medical attendants rushed into the arena. They checked Dekthor, then started working to revive him. Jake stayed back, hands still up in a guard position, not trusting that this was over. Dekthor woke up confused and angry. He tried to stand, but the medical staff held him down. He looked around, saw Jake standing there, and seemed to realize what had happened. Shame and disbelief crossed his alien features. Jake did something then that surprised everyone, including himself. He walked over and offered his hand to help Dekthor up. The warrior stared at the small hand like it was a weapon. "It was a good fight," Jake said quietly. "You're strong. I just got lucky." Helen's voice called out from the viewing area, explaining through the translator. "Among humans, offering a hand after combat is a sign of respect. He honors your strength." Dekthor looked at the hand for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached out with one of his four hands and grasped it. Jake pulled, more symbolic than actually helping, and the warrior got to his feet. The crowd's noise increased. Jake couldn't tell if it was approval or anger. He turned to face Queen Veronica, who had stood up from her throne. The queen descended from her platform. She walked across the arena floor, her footsteps echoing. Every eye in the place was on her. She stopped in front of Jake and looked down at him. "Explain," she said simply. Jake took a breath. "Your Majesty, humans aren't the biggest or strongest or fastest species. We know that. We've always known that. So we had to learn to fight differently." "How differently?" The alarm screamed through the ship. Red lights flashed along the walls and the floor vibrated beneath Jake's feet. Zekthari warriors rushed from the arena, their multiple arms reaching for weapons. The organized ceremony had transformed into controlled chaos in seconds. Queen Veronica's head snapped toward a communication panel on the wall. A warrior spoke rapidly in the Zekthari language, too fast for the translator to keep up. But Jake could read the Queen's body language well enough now. This was bad. The Queen turned to General Krovan. 3 ships have broken formation. They're targeting both this vessel and the human ship. Commander Zaltrock, Krovan said with disgust. I warned you he would not accept this alliance. My queen, Jake said quickly. I need to contact my ship. Make sure they know what's happening. Vernica nodded sharply. A guard brought Jake a communication device. He keyed it to the Valiant's frequency. Valiant, this is Morrison. Commander Grant, are you reading me? Grant's voice came through, tense but controlled. Jake, thank God. We're seeing weapon locks from 3 of the Zekthari ships. What's happening? Some of them don't like that the Queen made peace with us. They're staging a coup. Whatever you do, don't fire back. That's what they want. Copy that. We're sitting tight, but Jake, if they fire on us, I know. Just hold on. We'll figure something out. He turned back to the Queen. Sophie, Troy, and Helen had been brought down to the arena floor and now stood nearby, under guard but unharmed. Sophie looked at him with questions in her eyes. A holographic display appeared in the center of the arena, showing the tactical situation. The Queen's flagship was at the center, with the Valiant nearby. 3 other Zekthari warships had moved into attack positions, their weapons charged and ready. Then a face appeared in the display. Another Zekthari, this one scarred and angry-looking. Commander Zaltrock. My queen, Zaltrock's voice dripped with contempt. You dishonor yourself and our entire race. Showing respect to these soft, weak creatures? Making alliances with inferiors? This is not the Zekthari way. Veronica's voice was cold as ice. You dare question your queen? You dare threaten an honored guest? I question a queen who has gone weak. The Zekthari Empire was built on strength, not on bowing to lesser species. Rescind this foolish alliance. Execute the humans, or I will do it for you. I have given my word. A queen's oath is sacred. Then you are no longer fit to be queen. I invoke the right of challenge. Stand down or be destroyed along with your new pets. The display cut out. In the silence that followed, Jake could hear his own heartbeat. General Krovan spoke quietly. My queen, he commands 3 ships to our 1. And we cannot fire on them without your ship being damaged. The moment the humans try to leave, he will destroy both vessels. A stalemate, the Queen said. For now, but he will find a way to force our hand. Jake's mind was racing. There had to be a way out of this. They couldn't fight 3 warships. They couldn't run. But maybe they didn't have to do either. Your Majesty, he said. How many warriors are loyal to you on this ship? All of them. My personal guard is absolutely loyal. And Zaltrock's warriors? The ones on his ships? They follow him because they believe in the old ways. Strength above all else. They think I have grown soft. Jake looked at Dekthor, who still stood nearby. The warrior who he defeated? Who had felt firsthand what human fighting techniques could do. What if we could show them something different? What if we could prove that learning from humans makes you stronger, not weaker? The Queen's eyes focused on him sharply. Explain. You saw what I did to your champion. Not because I'm stronger, but because I know things he doesn't. If I could teach your warriors even just the basics, they'd have an advantage. They could combine Zekthari strength with human technique. In how much time? General Krovan asked. We have hours at most before Zaltrock loses patience. Sophie stepped forward. I can help. I've trained with Jake for years, and I can access our ship's database. We have thousands of hours of combat training videos, martial arts demonstrations, tactical manuals. Troy raised his hand. I can teach weapons handling, how humans compensate for being smaller and weaker. Helen looked nervous but determined. And I can explain human psychology, how we think during combat. It might help them understand the techniques better. Queen Veronica considered this. Jake could see the calculation in her eyes, weighing risks and benefits. Even if we learn these techniques, she said slowly, Zaltrock will not face us in honorable combat. He will try to destroy us from a distance. Then we board his ship, Jake said. Take the fight to him. If we can capture him, the other rebels might stand down. A boarding action against a prepared enemy? That is suicide. Not if they're expecting traditional Zekthari tactics and we give them something completely different. They've never fought humans before. They've never seen what we can do. Use that, General Croven made a thoughtful sound. The human has a point. Surprise is a powerful weapon. And if we combine our strength with their methods? The Queen looked at Dekthor. Champion, you faced this human. You felt his techniques. Could you learn them? Dekthor stepped forward. There was no shame in his bearing now, only determination. I believe I could, my Queen. The human fought with honor. He showed me weaknesses I did not know I had. If I can learn to exploit such weaknesses in others, then you would be a more dangerous warrior than ever before. The Queen finished. She turned to Jake. You have your chance, human. 6 hours. That is all I can guarantee before Zaltrock acts. Teach my warriors what you can. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 6 hours to teach beings who had fought one way for thousands of years to fight completely differently. 6 hours to give them skills that had taken him a lifetime to learn. But he nodded. We'll do our best, Your Majesty. The arena was cleared and transformed into a training ground. General Crovan selected 20 of his best warriors, including Dekthor. They gathered in a circle around Jake, their multiple eyes focused on him with intense curiosity. Sophie established a link to the Valiant and started streaming combat footage to displays around the arena. Videos of boxing matches, martial arts demonstrations, military hand-to-hand combat training. Troy set up a weapons demonstration area. Helen prepared diagrams of human anatomy and psychology. Jake stood in the center looking at the faces of the warriors around him. They were trusting him with their lives. More than that, they were trusting him with their queen's life and the future of their empire. No pressure. Okay, he said. First lesson. Forget everything you know about fighting. That got their attention. One warrior, younger than the others, spoke up. Forget our training? Not forget. Set it aside temporarily. You've been taught to meet strength with strength, right? To prove your power through direct confrontation. Nods all around. Humans can't do that. When we face something stronger, we don't try to overpower it. We redirect it. We use its strength against itself. Dekthor, come here. The champion stepped forward. Jake positioned himself in front of the much larger warrior. Push me, hard as you can. Dekthor placed 2 of his hands on Jake's chest and pushed. Jake didn't resist. Instead, he moved with the push, grabbing Dekthor's arms and pulling while turning his body. The warrior's own momentum carried him forward off balance. See? He's stronger, but I use that strength. His push became my pull. Now all of you pair up. We're going to practice this until you can do it without thinking. For the next hour, the arena filled with the sounds of training. Zekthari warriors practiced redirecting attacks using leverage instead of strength, targeting weak points in armor. They were quick learners, adapting the techniques to work with their forearms. Sophie worked with a group on timing and reading body language. Watch the shoulders, she explained. They move before the arms. If you can see the attack coming half a second early, you can counter it. Troy demonstrated weapons tactics. Size doesn't matter if you control the angles. Get to the side or behind. Use cover. Make them fight on your terms, not theirs. Helen explained human pain response and nervous systems, helping the Zekathari understand where to strike for maximum effect without necessarily killing. After 3 hours, Jake called for a break. The warriors were breathing hard, their armor dented from practice impacts, but there was excitement in their eyes. They were seeing possibilities they'd never imagined. Dekthor approached Jake, moving with new awareness. I understand now why you defeated me. You saw patterns I did not know existed, and now you see them too, Jake said. You're already fighting differently. We all are. But can we learn enough in 3 more hours? You don't need to be masters. You just need to be unpredictable. The rebels are expecting traditional Zekthari fighting. Give them something they've never seen before and you'll have the advantage. They trained for 3 more hours. Jake pushed them hard and they responded. Their natural strength combined with human technique created something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. When the 6 hours were up, Queen Veronica returned to the arena. She watched her warriors demonstrate what they'd learned, and Jake saw approval in her expression. Impressive, she said. But the real test comes now. Commander Zaltrock has issued his ultimatum. We have 1 hour before he attacks. General. The boarding pod shook violently as it launched from the Queen's flagship. Jake gripped the safety harness, his stomach lurching with each twist and turn. Around him, Zekthari warriors sat calmly, their weapons ready. They'd done this hundreds of times. Jake had never done it at all. Sophie sat across from him, her face pale but determined. Troy was checking his weapon for the third time. Helen looked terrified, but she'd insisted on coming. Someone needed to coordinate information, she'd said. Through the small viewport, Jake could see the Valiant. Commander Grant had positioned the ship to provide covering fire. Energy beams lanced through space, forcing the rebel ships to split their attention. Dekthor sat next to Jake, his massive form taking up twice the space. The warrior had volunteered to lead the assault team. He looked at Jake and made a gesture that the translator indicated was encouragement. "Remember the training," the warrior said. "Do not meet their strength. Use it." Jake managed to smile. "You're a quick learner." "I had a good teacher." The pod lurched hard and alarms blared. They were taking fire from Zaltrok's defensive systems, but the pod's armor held, and seconds later they slammed into the hull of the rebel flagship with a metallic crunch. Cutting torches activated automatically, slicing through the hull. Jake's ears popped as atmosphere equalized. Then the hatch blew open and the Zekthari warriors poured through. Jake followed, his heart pounding. They'd entered a cargo bay. Rebel warriors were already responding, weapons raised. But they hesitated for a split second, confused by the mixed group of Zekthari and humans. That split second was all Dekthor needed. Instead of charging straight at the defenders like traditional tactics demanded, he rolled to the side, using a cargo container for cover. The other warriors followed his lead, spreading out and using the environment. The rebels fired, but their shots hit empty air or cargo containers. They weren't used to enemies who didn't stand and fight directly. They weren't prepared for opponents who used cover and angles. Jake saw an opening. A rebel warrior had moved too far forward, away from his squad. Jake signaled to Sophie and they moved in sync, just like they'd practiced 1,000 times in training. Jake drew the warrior's attention from one side while Sophie came from the other. The rebel turned to face Jake, raising his weapon. But Sophie struck from behind, hitting a nerve cluster at the base of the warrior's neck. The rebel stumbled, and Jake finished it with a sweep that sent the larger being crashing down. Troy provided covering fire from behind a cargo container, his shots precisely placed to force the rebels into positions where the Zekthari warriors could flank them. He wasn't trying to hit every target. He was controlling the battlefield. The fight was over in less than a minute. 6 rebel warriors down, none of them dead, all of them confused and demoralized. They'd expected a standard Zekthari assault and gotten something completely different. Dekthor secured the prisoners. Phase 1 complete. Now we move to the command deck. Helen accessed a wall terminal, her fingers flying over the alien interface. She'd studied Zekthari technology during the flight over. "I've got a route. Maintenance corridor less likely to be defended." They moved through the ship in small groups using the tactics Jake had taught. "Stay quiet. Use cover. Don't engage unless necessary. Bypass strong points. Find the weak spots." Twice they encountered rebel patrols. Twice they used coordination and timing to overwhelm the defenders before they could raise an alarm. The rebel warriors fought bravely, but they fought the old way. They expected honor duels and direct confrontations. They got ambushes and tactical maneuvers instead. As they got closer to the command deck, the resistance increased. The rebels were adapting, pulling more warriors to defend their commander. Jake's group took cover in a junction, energy bolts scorching the walls around them. "There are too many," one of the Zekthari warriors said. "We cannot push through." Jake studied the layout. "We don't need to push through. We need to go around." "Around?" Dekthor looked confused. "Helen, are there any access shafts? Maintenance tunnels?" She checked her data pad. "Yes, but they're small. Designed for repair drones, not warriors." Jake grinned. "Perfect. Sophie, Troy, you're with me. The rest of you keep their attention here. Make noise. Make them think we're trying to break through." Dekthor understood immediately. "A diversion. While you strike from an unexpected angle. Yes, this could work." The maintenance shaft was cramped and dark. Jake led the way, crawling through spaces that would have been impossible for a Zekthari. He heard fighting behind them as Dekthor's team engaged the rebels, keeping them focused on the main corridor. They emerged in a storage room adjacent to the command deck. Through the wall, Jake could hear voices. Commander Zaltrok was giving orders, coordinating his ship's defense. Sophie checked her weapon. "How many do you think are in there?" "At least a dozen," Jake said. "Probably more. And there's 3 of us," Troy said. "I like those odds. Not good odds, but I like them." Jake smiled despite the situation. Remember, we're not trying to fight them all. We just need to get to Zaltrak. Cut off the head and the body dies or gets really angry, Sophie muttered. That too. Ready? They nodded. Jake placed his hand on the door control, counted to 3 silently and hit the button. The door slid open and they burst through. The command deck was large with multiple levels and stations. Rebel warriors stood at various positions, and there on a raised platform at the center stood Commander Zaltrak. For a moment, everyone froze. The rebels couldn't believe humans had made it this far. Zaltrak's expression shifted from shock to rage. "Kill them!" he roared. The nearest warrior lunged at Jake, but Jake was already moving, sliding under the warrior's strike and coming up behind him. He struck the back of the warrior's knee, dropped him off balance, and kept running toward the platform. Sophie and Troy covered his flanks, their movements coordinated perfectly. They'd fought together for years, knew each other's rhythms. When Sophie engaged a warrior on the left, Troy automatically covered the right. When Troy needed to reload, Sophie stepped in to fill the gap. Jake reached the platform stairs just as Dekthor's team breached the main entrance. The rebels were caught between 2 forces, their formation collapsing. The Zekthari warriors used their new training, fighting smart instead of just fighting hard. Zaltrak drew a massive blade and came down the stairs to meet Jake. Up close, the rebel commander was even more intimidating than Queen Vranica. Scars covered his face and his eyes burned with fury. "You dare?" Zaltrak hissed. "You insignificant creature, you have corrupted our queen with your weakness. I will tear you apart." He swung the blade. It was fast, faster than anything Jake had seen in the arena. But Jake had been watching how Zekthari telegraphed their attacks. He saw the shift in Zaltrak's shoulder, the tensing of muscles. He rolled aside as the blade carved through the air where he'd been standing. Zaltrak swung again, and again. Each strike was powerful enough to split Jake in half. But each strike missed because Jake wasn't trying to block or parry. He was staying just out of range, forcing the commander to overextend. "Stand still and fight," Zaltrak bellowed. "Why would I do that?" Jake asked, breathing hard. "I'm smaller and weaker, so I fight smarter." That enraged the commander even more. He abandoned all technique and just started swinging wildly. Jake led him in a circle, wearing him down. Each swing took energy. Each miss created an opening. Then Dekthor was there, appearing on the platform behind Zaltrak. The champion had fought through the rebel warriors to reach them. But he didn't attack immediately. He waited, watching Jake's movements, looking for an opening. Jake saw him and understood. They'd need to coordinate. He caught Dekthor's eye and nodded slightly. Jake feinted left. Zaltrak followed, bringing his blade around. But it was a trap. Jake reversed direction, getting inside the commander's guard. At the same moment, Dekthor struck from behind, using the joint lock techniques Jake had taught. Zaltrak tried to turn to bring his blade to bear, but he was caught between 2 opponents who weren't fighting the way he expected. Jake went low, sweeping legs. Dekthor went high, controlling arms. The rebel commander stumbled, his blade clattering to the deck. Dekthor got him in a hold that pinned all 4 arms. Zaltrak struggled, but the technique was solid. The more he fought, the tighter it became. "You have lost," Dekthor said. "Surrender, Commander." Zaltrak looked around the command deck. His warriors were down, disarmed, surrounded. The assault team had won without killing anyone. He sagged in Dekthor's grip. "I surrender," he said, the words bitter. Sophie moved to one of the communication stations, broadcasting to all rebel ships. "Your commander is captured. Stand down." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the rebel ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over. Jake sat down heavily on the platform stairs, his legs shaking with exhaustion. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually done it. Troy came over and sat beside him. "Not bad for a day's work." "Not bad at all," Jake agreed. An hour later, they were back on the Queen's flagship. Zaltrak and the other rebel leaders were in custody. Queen Vranica had summoned Jake and his team to the throne room. When they entered, the room was packed with Zekthari warriors. Word had spread about the assault, about how humans and Zekthari had. The days following the alliance were a blur of activity. Jake found himself in endless meetings, planning sessions, and demonstrations. The Zekthari wanted to learn everything about human combat techniques, while humans wanted to understand Zekthari technology and culture. Commander Grant brought the Valiant alongside the Queen's flagship. For the first time, the two crews mingled freely. Jake watched from an observation deck as humans and Zekthari worked side by side, installing new communication systems that would link their vessels. Sophie joined him at the window. She'd barely slept in 3 days, coordinating between the two species. But she had a smile on her face. "It's amazing," she said. "A week ago, we didn't even know they existed. Now we're working together like we've been allies for years." "People adapt fast when they have to," Jake said. "Both species. The Zekthari are teaching our engineers about their power systems. Did you know their ships run on controlled singularities? Actual black holes, just tiny ones. It's incredible. And we're teaching them about computer systems and artificial intelligence. Troy says they've been doing ship calculations by hand for centuries. They never trusted machines to do the thinking." Sophie laughed. "Can you imagine warriors doing math problems in the middle of space battles?" "It explains why they favor close combat," Jake said. "Harder to calculate trajectories for energy weapons when you're doing it in your head." A Zekthari warrior approached them. It was one of the younger ones who had trained with Jake in the arena. His name was difficult for humans to pronounce, so they called him Vex. "Captain Morrison," Vex said, "the Queen requests your presence. She has received word from the Zekthari High Council." Jake and Sophie exchanged glances. The High Council governed the entire Zekthari Empire. They'd sent word about the alliance to the Council days ago, but there had been no response until now. They followed Vex to the throne room. Commander Grant was already there, along with Helen and Troy. General Krovan stood beside the Queen's throne, his expression unreadable. Queen Veronica looked troubled. "That wasn't a good sign, my friends," she said as they entered. "I have news. The High Council has responded to my report about humanity and our alliance." Grant stepped forward. "And? They are divided. Some support the alliance. They see the wisdom in learning from another species. But others call it betrayal. They say I have weakened the Empire by showing respect to a lesser race." "That sounds familiar," Jake said, thinking of Commander Zaltrock. "Indeed. The Council has demanded proof that humans are worthy of alliance. They want to see for themselves what makes your species special." "What kind of proof?" Sophie asked. General Krovan spoke up. "They have invited a human delegation to the capital world. There you would demonstrate your abilities and knowledge to the full Council. If they approve, the alliance stands. If they do not—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "When do they want us?" Grant asked. "Immediately. We would need to depart within the day." Grant looked at her officers. "Your thoughts?" "It could be a trap," Troy said bluntly. "Get us all in one place and eliminate the problem." "But if we refuse, the alliance dies before it truly begins," Helen countered. "And we lose the only friends we've found in this region of space." Jake looked at Queen Veronica. "Your Majesty, do you believe the Council will honor their word?" The Queen met his eyes. "I believe most of them will. But there are elements within the Council who resist change. They fear what they do not understand. They see your species as a threat to our traditional way of life." "Sounds like politics," Sophie muttered. "Every species has politics," the Queen said with what might have been amusement. "It seems this is one trait all intelligent life shares. Jake made a decision. We'll go. Not all of us, but a small team. Me, Sophie, Troy, and Helen. Commander Grant should stay with the Valiant in case things go wrong." "I don't like splitting up," Grant said. "Neither do I. But if the Council wants a demonstration, they should see the same team that fought alongside the Queen's warriors. We're proof that the alliance works." Grant considered this, then nodded. "Agreed, but you take communication equipment. And if I don't hear from you every 6 hours, I'm coming to get you. Alliance or no alliance." "Understood, Commander." They departed the next morning. The journey to the Zekthari capital world took 3 days at faster-than-light speeds. Jake spent the time learning more about Zekthari culture from General Krovan and Dekthor. The Zekthari, he learned, had evolved on a harsh world with many predators. Strength and combat ability weren't just valued. They were necessary for survival. Their entire culture had built itself around the concept of proving worth through physical prowess. But strength alone was not enough, Dekthor explained during one training session. Intelligence was also needed. Strategy, the ability to learn. These traits were also valued. But over time, we began to believe that because we were strong, we did not need to learn from others. That was our mistake. "Every civilization makes mistakes," Jake said. The question is whether you learn from them. That is what the Queen believes. That is why she supports this alliance. But not all agree with her. Some see any change as weakness. When they finally arrived at the capital world, Jake was stunned. The planet was beautiful, with deep purple oceans and crystalline cities that caught the light of its red sun. Ships filled the orbital space, thousands of them, from tiny scouts to massive battleships. This is the heart of the Empire, Queen Veronica said proudly. 7 billion Zekthari call this world home. It has been our capital for 5,000 years. They landed at a massive complex in the capital city. Zekthari architecture was imposing, all sharp angles and towering spires. Everything was built to make visitors feel small. Jake supposed that was the point. The High Council met in a chamber that made the Queen's throne room look tiny. 12 Zekthari elders sat in a semicircle, elevated above the floor where petitioners stood. Each one wore elaborate ceremonial armor decorated with the symbols of their house. Queen Veronica led Jake and his team into the chamber. They stood in the center while hundreds of eyes watched from the galleries above. This wasn't just a council meeting. It was a public spectacle. The eldest council member, a scarred warrior who looked ancient even by Zekthari standards, spoke first. Queen Veronica, you have brought these humans before us, claiming they are worthy of alliance, claiming they possess knowledge that can benefit the Empire. We are here to judge the truth of these claims. Honored elders, the Queen responded. I have witnessed their abilities personally. I have seen them defeat our champions. I have seen them teach our warriors new ways of fighting. I have fought beside them in battle. They are worthy. Another council member spoke up, this one younger and more aggressive in bearing. So you say. But we have only your word. We must see for ourselves. Human, step forward. Jake moved to the center of the chamber. He felt very small under all those eyes. You are the one who defeated Warrior Prime Dekthor in combat, while unarmed? Yes, honored elder. And you claim to have taught our warriors these techniques? In mere hours. I taught them the basics. They're quick learners. They adapted the techniques to work with their natural advantages. A third council member, female and decorated with many battle honors, leaned forward. Prove it. Demonstrate these techniques before the council. Jake looked at the Queen. She nodded slightly. Show them. Dekthor stepped forward to serve as Jake's demonstration partner. For the next hour, Jake showed the council everything he'd taught the warriors. Leverage, timing, targeting weak points, using an opponent's strength against them, reading body language, adapting to different situations. The council watched in silence. Some leaned forward with interest. Others sat back with expressions that might have been skepticism or disapproval. When the demonstration ended, the aggressive council member spoke again. Impressive tricks. But tricks are not strength. How do we know these methods are truly superior? Perhaps you simply faced inferior opponents. Jake felt his temper rise but kept his voice calm. With respect, honored elder, they're not tricks. They're principles, and they work because they're based on understanding how bodies move, how minds work, how physics operates. Size and strength matter, but they're not everything. Words, the council member said dismissively. I want proof. Real proof. Fight one of my warriors. Here now before the council. If you win, perhaps we will consider your words. If you lose, this farce ends. The eldest council member raised a hand. Council member Torvek, this is highly irregular. The human is a guest who claims to be superior to our warriors. Let him prove it. Or let him admit his queen was mistaken. It was a trap, Jake realized. If he refused, he looked weak and the alliance died. If he accepted and lost, same result. But if he accepted and won, it would only make Torvek angrier. There was no good choice, so Jake made the only choice he could. I accept, he said clearly. But on one condition. You are in no position to make conditions, Torvek said. Hear me out. I'll fight your warrior. But then, one of your warriors fights one of ours, one who I trained in the new techniques. Let the council see the difference. That caused murmuring throughout the chamber. It was a clever move, Jake hoped. It showed confidence in the training, not just in his own abilities. The council's arena was even larger than the one on Queen Veronica's ship. It could hold thousands of spectators, and Jake suspected every seat was filled. News of the challenge had spread fast. This wasn't just about proving human worth anymore. It had become a public trial of the alliance itself. Jake stood in the center of the arena, rolling his shoulders to stay loose. Across from him stood Torvek's chosen champion. The warrior was massive even by Zekthari standards, easily 10 feet tall with armor that looked like it had seen 100 battles. His name was Kreshtor, and he carried a reputation as one of the deadliest fighters in the Empire. The eldest council member's voice boomed across the arena. The challenge is accepted. The human fights first, unarmed as is his custom. If he defeats Kreshtor, then one of our warriors who has learned his methods will face another champion. Let all who watch remember what they see today. Jake glanced up at the council platform. Queen Veronica sat among the elders, her expression carefully neutral. Sophie, Troy, and Helen watched from a guest box, all of them looking worried. Dekthor stood nearby with the other warriors Jake had trained, ready for the second fight. Kreshtor picked up a massive warhammer. It looked like it weighed more than Jake's entire body. The warrior swung it experimentally, and the wind from the movement ruffled Jake's hair from 15 feet away. "I will make this quick, human," Kreshtor said. "You have courage to face me." "I will honor that with a swift death." "I appreciate the thought," Jake replied. "But I'm not planning to die today." The signal was given. Kreshtor charged immediately, the hammer raised high. Jake could feel the ground shake with each step. The warrior was fast, incredibly fast for something so large. But Jake had fought Dekthor. He'd fought Zaltrok. He knew how Zekthari moved now. He saw the attack coming in the shift of Kreshtor's weight, the angle of his shoulders. Jake waited until the last possible second, then dove forward and to the side, rolling under the hammer strike. The hammer crashed into the arena floor with a boom that hurt Jake's ears. Chunks of stone flew up from the impact. If that had hit him, there wouldn't have been enough left to identify. Jake came up behind Kreshtor and struck at the back of the warrior's knee. His fist felt like it hit solid metal, but he saw Kreshtor stumble slightly. Good. The armor had weak points at the joints, just like he'd observed before. Kreshtor spun faster than something that large should have been able to move, bringing the hammer around in a horizontal arc. Jake dropped flat to the ground and the weapon passed over him. He rolled away quickly, putting distance between them. The crowd was dead silent. They'd expected the fight to be over in seconds. Instead, the human was still moving, still dodging, still alive. Kreshtor attacked again, this time more carefully. He used his free hands to grab while swinging the hammer with two others. It was a good strategy. Forced Jake to choose between dodging the weapon or avoiding the grapple. Jake chose neither. He went low, sliding on the stone floor between Kreshtor's legs. The warrior's own bulk worked against him. His massive frame couldn't bend fast enough to follow. Jake came up behind him again and jumped, grabbing onto the warrior's back. Kreshtor roared and reached back with all four arms, trying to pull Jake off. But Jake had positioned himself in the one spot where the warrior's arms couldn't quite reach him properly. He worked his way up to Kreshtor's neck, hooking his legs around for leverage. The warrior threw himself backward, trying to crush Jake against the arena floor. Jake held on, but the impact drove the air from his lungs. Pain shot through his back. Kreshtor did it again and again, slamming his back into the stone. Jake's vision started to blur. He couldn't take many more hits like that. He had to end this now. He adjusted his position slightly, found the nerve cluster at the base of Kreshtor's neck, and applied pressure with both thumbs while squeezing with his legs. Kreshtor's movements became sluggish. The warrior tried to slam back again, but there was less force behind it. Jake held on, maintaining the pressure. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Kreshtor dropped to one knee. His arms stopped reaching for Jake. At 40 seconds, the massive warrior collapsed forward onto the arena floor. Jake released him immediately and rolled away, barely able to move. His back screamed with pain. He might have cracked a rib, but he was alive. And Kreshtor was down. The arena exploded with sound. Clicking, hissing, and what Jake had learned was the Zekthari version of shocked exclamations. Medical staff rushed onto the floor to check Kreshtor. Jake forced himself to stand straight, though every movement hurt. He walked over to where Kreshtor was being revived and waited. When the warrior's eyes opened, Jake offered his hand. Kreshtor stared at the hand for a moment. Then slowly he reached up and grasped it. Jake helped pull him to a sitting position. "You fight with honor," Kreshtor said quietly. "I have never been defeated. You are the first. I understand now why our queen respects your kind." "You're strong," Jake replied. "Stronger than anyone I've faced. I just got lucky. That was not luck. That was skill." Kreshtor got to his feet and raised Jake's hand high. The human has defeated me fairly. The crowd's noise increased. Jake looked up at the council platform. Some of the elders were leaning forward, clearly impressed. Others, including Torvek, looked angry. The eldest council member stood. The first challenge is complete. The human has proven his skill. Now for the second demonstration, let one of our warriors who has learned these human techniques face a champion. Dekthor stepped forward. He'd volunteered for this, insisting that as Jake's first student, he should be the one to prove the training worked. Torvek selected another warrior, nearly as large as Kreshtor. This one carried a spear and shield, traditional weapons. The fight began immediately. Jake watched from the side, Sophie now beside him supporting his injured back. What happened next was beautiful to watch. Dekthor didn't fight the way other Zekthari fought. He moved like water, just as Jake had taught him. He used angles and timing. When his opponent thrust with the spear, Dekthor redirected it instead of blocking. When the shield came around, he ducked under it and struck at weak points. But more than that, Dekthor had adapted the techniques for his forearms. He could redirect an attack with one pair of hands while striking with the others. He could feint in multiple directions at once. He'd taken human methods and made them his own, combining them with Zekthari strength. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. Dekthor disarmed his opponent, swept his legs, and put him in a submission hold that left the champion helpless. The arena went absolutely silent. A Zekthari warrior had just dominated another Zekthari warrior using human techniques. The proof was undeniable. Dekthor helped his opponent up, mimicking the gesture of respect Jake had shown. Then he turned to the council and spoke clearly. "Honored elders, I was defeated by this human in fair combat. It shamed me. But then he taught me why I lost.
He showed me techniques our people had never considered.
He made me a better warrior, not a weaker one, a stronger one. This alliance does not diminish us, it elevates us." The eldest council member looked at his fellow elders. They conferred quietly for several minutes. Finally, he stood and addressed the arena. "The council has seen enough. We have witnessed humans defeat our champions. We have witnessed our own warriors grow stronger through their teachings. The question before us is clear. Do we accept this alliance?" He looked at each council member in turn. One by one, they signaled their approval. Even some who had seemed skeptical were nodding. Finally, only Torvek remained. "Council member Torvek," the elder said. "Your vote?" Torvek looked at Jake, then at Dekthor, then at his own defeated champion. His expression was conflicted. Finally, he made a gesture of acceptance. "I vote to approve. These humans have proven their worth. And perhaps I have been too rigid in my thinking. If we are to grow, we must be willing to learn." The eldest elder raised all forearms high. "Then it is decided. The alliance between the Zekthari Empire and humanity is formally approved by this council. Let it be recorded and celebrated." The arena erupted in sound. Warriors clicked and hissed in approval. Jake felt Sophie hugging him despite his injured back. Troy and Helen rushed down from the guest box, both of them talking at once. Queen Vranica descended from the council platform and approached Jake. She looked at him with something that might have been pride. "You did it," she said simply. "You proved to the entire empire that humans are worthy partners. You have changed the future, Captain Jake Morrison." Jake managed to smile despite the pain. "We did it together, Your Majesty. That's what allies do." The following weeks were filled with ceremonies, negotiations, and celebrations. Trade agreements were signed. Technology exchanges were arranged. Plans were made for joint military training programs and cultural exchanges. Jake spent most of that time in the medical bay, recovering from his cracked ribs and bruised spine. But he had plenty of visitors. Zekthari warriors came to thank him and ask questions about human fighting techniques. Human crew members came to celebrate their success. 3 months after the council's approval, Jake stood in a newly constructed training facility on the Zekthari capital world. Human instructors worked alongside Zekthari warriors, teaching and learning.